All right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 prakim Rambam, Hilchos, Sha'ar, Avos, Hatumais, prakim Vav, Zayin, and Ches. We are starting with Perek Vav. Now, Perek Vav, going on the Seder, especially as the Rambam began in the Koiseres, we're following that order. We're going to be learning about Tumas Avodah Zarah. We're going to see that Tumas Avodah Zarah is midrabanan. However, there are certain asmachtas that we have from the Torah. And as we will see, it's relatively lenient. As we'll see, it's lenient in certain areas like a sheretz. It's lenient in certain areas like a mace. It's in certain areas like a nida. All of this will be defined very beautifully. And the ikar is that Rambam is going to categorize Tumas Avodah Zarah into 4 groups, and we're going to use the word avos, right? Like we have the concept of avos by Shabbos, chves by Nizakin, right? Primary categories. There are going to be 4 avos of Tumas Avodah Zarah, and there are nuances of differences between each one. You have the Avodah Zarah proper. You have the Misham Sheha, that which is in service of the Avodah Zarah, the base of the Avodah Zarah, etc. You have the Tikroiva, something that's offered to an idol, and then there's unique halachas regarding Yayin, Shenes Nasech LaAvodah Zarah. These are the 4 avos that we're going to go through. And B'chlal, in this chapter, the Rambam is going to go through a very important review, not only b'negei Avodah Zarah, but regarding anything that's tamei, exactly how does it impart tuma, the general rules that if something is tamei on one level, when there is halachic contact, it normally passes on the tuma to a lower level. We're going to review, avi avos, the avos, again, the vlad, which is rishon, sheni, shlishi, revi, as we'll see in this chapter. Without any further ado, Perek Shishi has 16 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Tumas Avodah Zarah is midrabanan. However, yesh la remez b'Torah. What's the remez? It says, I think it's in Parshas Vayishlach, right? Yeah, right after the Muhammad that we had with Shechem, after Maisadina, and we won that battle, and Yaakov Avinu told his children, Hasiru es Elohei hanechar asher b'soichechem. And then the Chumash writes the word Vihi Toharu. That's the source, Vihi Toharu Mashma, that they were tummy. And V'hachlifu Sim Loisechem. So that's an emes. Now, V'arba Avei Satuma Yeshlo. We're going to divide, or we're going to categorize Avodah Zarah into 4 primary categories. The Avodah Zarah itself. Number 2, Umisham Sheh, what we will call the accessories of the Avodah Zarah. Number 3, Tikroi V'shalah, that which is offered to it. And the Yayin Shenes Nasich, wine that's poured as a libation. And the Tumas Kulam is Medivrei. And now we'll see the nuance, why we're making 4 avos, because each one has different rules, slightly different one from the other. Avodah Zarah Atzma Halacha Beis, Mitama imparts Tumah, both to Adam and to Kalim. In other words, Midrabanan, it's tummy on the level of an Av. How does it impart it? B'maga. And therefore, Kleis Cheres, what's the Maga of a Kleis Cheres when it enters its ear space? But it does not impart Tumah B'chlal through Masa. And this is similar to a Sheretz. That was the leniency we had by Sheretz. Only B'maga, not B'masa, right? Unlike what? Chevra, let's Chazer, unlike Nevela. Right? Nevela is imparted both B'maga and B'masa. Why did the Chachamim say it's only like a Sheretz? So the Torah says, because it says, this is a pasuk in Ekev, also regarding Avodah Zarah. And now you appreciate why Hashem uses the words, Moshe Rabbeinu uses the word, Shaketz Tishaksenu. Regarding that, when you go to Eretz Yisrael, you conquer the homes, get rid of the Avodah Zarahs. The Torah uses the word Sheketz. So the Chachamim say, like a Sheretz says Lekula, only B'magad, not B'mas. Another din, how much of it do you need? By a Sheretz, the din is Adash, a lentil. You need more of it. A Shiura Kezayis. Why? Because you can't make this more Chamura than a mace. And again, we're going to find a pasuk for that. Even if you have the ganza getchkele, the whole thing, not a piece of it, is smaller than a kezayis, it does not impart a tumah. Now, what happens if you have a groisa avodah zarah? If you cut a limb off, right, like Avraham Avinu, our Zayda. Even if it's a huge piece, as big as a plow, there's Apsarem, there's Alpiruchnius, why he uses that as an example. Some of the Mishnah uses it. Why the Mishnah uses that? But even if it's very big, also tar. In other words, only Hatsura Kula when it is Shlema. Now again, you have to have the minimum size of a Kazayis Pseda. Why? What's the source? Because it says a pasuk in Yishayahu, Tizreim Kumaydava. The Torah is telling us, the prophet is telling us, cast them away like someone who's impure. Dava, right? Need a dava. So what's the comparison? Man need the einem atama leivarim. In other words, and why are we lenient? Because it's midrabanan. So the Rambam is going to explain where do we find its leniencies. It's only like a sheretz, meaning she'enem atama b'masam. It's like a maid's lokula that you have to have the size of a kazayis. Right? If it would be through and through like a sheretz, then it would be even an adosh. V'chanida. Now, if you have an idol that you can take it apart into pieces, now certain things were made to be taken apart and to be reassembled. Like when it comes to Hilchas Shabbos, right? You have these halachas, right? The menorah, muksa, not muksa. So in other words, even if only a hedyot is able to reassemble it, and all the pieces are here, still based on the rule that it's not metama le'ivarim, right? It's still eina metama, only when it is put together. Kol nisham she'avodah zarah is like a sheretz, which means it's only metama adam v'kelim b'maga, kli cheres ba'aver, the eina metamen b'masa, and the mishamshim, the accessories of an idol, like the idol, you have to have at least a kazayis. Now, afilu katzas misham shor kazayis menakeli. Here is a chiddush. You would think that the accessory of something should not be more stringent than the thing itself. Should be more lenient. Not in this detail. Here, even a part of the mishamshim will also be matama if it has the size of a kazayis, taka only through maga. But a part of it will also be matama. Metamik yesheretz. Just like a part of a sheretz. That's what it means, not a shira. And zu chaymer b'meshamshel yoisem avodah zarah atzmo. I want to think maybe you have lahavdul, from the Tuma to Tara, that Lamashal, when it says that Godel Shimush Tamid Chachamim is greater than learning from them. The Arum, that's the Arum, the Oir Makev, that's the way the Alter Rebbe words it, has a more power than the Oir Pnimi sometimes. So the Meshamshim have a certain greater power of Tuma than the Avodah Zarah itself. That's a din. The meshamshem means anything that's called an accessory. Mamash, anything they put it on a beam. The beam is a meshamesh. You have certain. If the avodah zarah is a getchke, so they dress it up. Mishamshel. Beis avodah zarah and avonov and ve'etzov. Oh, here you go. A house. The ganze house is called a meshamsh. The afaroi b'tamen b'kazayis b'maga kechol meshamshem. Stop to know that this is the guy we're speaking in Lefnim Mishura Sadin, that when the Rebbe used to walk home, right, and throughout Golus history, especially by Big Tzadikim, there was a church right near the shul. All these mices, but the Marshav, so there was a church on over there in Brooklyn, I think, and the Rebbe would walk on the sidewalk. If the gate of the church would be open to the sidewalk, the little gate. The Rebbe would not walk on the sidewalk. He would step on the street to walk, not on the side. Imagine. The gate would be closed, he would walk there. Ad kedei kach. Halacha vav. It goes without saying, it's good to know that the Yid is never allowed to go into a church. I'm speaking about into the sanctuary part of a church, God forbid. And Zicher, Kolchchem, Kalachaymer, in the Aviyah Vaisatum over there in the Vatican. Be very careful from that. People like traveling, they go to Rome, go visit the Jewish ghetto. Don't go. Halacha. If a person doesn't even enter fully, but berubai into a church, nitma kenegeya, that's called negeya, that's a chumrah. If the open part of the cheres, of the clay cheres, is opened up to the house, even though the roiv of the cheres is outside, but we don't care about the roiv because it only acquires tumor from the inner space. The inner space is in it. The nitma. Sapsolim The katedrois, different types of benches and couches. Shehichnes rubam lebeis avodah zara, also rive to meim. And all of them, meaning everything we learned in this Perek up until now, like we mentioned, Nidrabanan avodah zara is a av, which means if it does have contact, what does that thing acquire? Rishon l'tuma. Halacha zayin, moving on to the third primary category, tekrevis avodah zara. Interesting again, tekrevis imparts tuma more than the avodah zara and more than the mishamshim, even b'masa. Tekrevis avodah zara metama l'mago b'masa, like an avela, something that's offered for, and the shiura is still the kazayis. Cold over shemakrivan, whatever was served, basar sha'arich leno mashkin, hakol kan avela. Why? The reason is because the Torah calls tekrevis avodah zara zivchei mason. The mason, a mace, right? Is matama, speaking about an avela, matama b'masa. There we go. But the idol itself, guys, we're going to learn this in a different area. An idol itself, as if it belongs to a guy, could become bottled. What's that bottled? You cut the nose off. You do it b'kavana to show that you're not machshav it as a deity. If it belongs to a goy, it becomes ois avodah zara. And for example, we're not allowed to have hana'ah from an idol. If it belongs to a goy, only a goy can be mevatel it. You can have hana'ah. There's no such a thing by food. So it's food given to avodah zara cannot become bottled. It can never become latira bana. However, as far as isur hana'ah is concerned, if someone did something to the food to show that they don't want us to be the krevis avodah zara, asur bana remains. The question that Rambam has is whether for tuma, if you move the tuma, in bitla reizo safek l'tuma, and normally when you have a suffix midrabanan, you're mekel, just to know the rules. By avodah zara, even though everything we're learning in this chapter is midrabanan, suffix avodah zara is l'chumra. Abel kli shetu krevis avodah zara shebitla, but the keli itself, that tahar. Not only is it mutar b'hana, but you take away the tuma. But you have to know the halachas of bitl avodah zara. It's good to know that a yid, God forbid, that made an idol, that made it into a deity, a yid can never be mevatel. Halachiches. Yain shenesnasech avodah zara. This is the fourth up. Metame adam bekelim b'maga uklicheres ba'avir. And here again, wine like the kroivus l'chumra is a metame adam b'kamasik and avela. The shear of wine, and this is not the first time we're learning it, and I know normally by liquids the shear is a revius. Someone should make a list. Where do we find by yayin the shear of a kazayis? That Rambam already explained previously, and we spoke it out. How do you measure a kazayis from wine? First of all, if I'm not mistaken, a revius is like 3 zaysim. But how do you know the shear of a kazayis? You take liquid. You take a zayis, whatever the halachic size of a zayis has to be, you put it in the liquid that's displaced. If I put the cup until the top, if I put a zayis in, the liquid that's displaced because of the olive, that's pshat kazayis. That's how you measure shiurim by liquids. The tumasa kazayis, and where is that? Again, everything is midrabanan, but the remes is because in Shira Sazino, Shenemar, Asher Chelev Ziboy Chemoy Yoichelu and Yishtu Yein Nisichan. In other words, Hare Yein Nisichan is Kechelev Ziboy Chemoy. And we just said by Tekrevis Avodah Zara that what's the chumrah there, my friends? That it's matama even b'masa. So yayin is also matama even b'masa. However, the ein matama tumazu elo yayin shenesnasich biyad l'fnei Avodah Zara. That chumrah is only if you pour it with your hand. But stam yeinam shel goyim and takam in the rabbanon. What are we afraid of? We are afraid that when they stoked it, when they steered it, they had in mind l'shem Avodah Zara. And even when we know they didn't do it, today they manufacture wines in a company. The Chachamim made a takana, you can't have stam yain. It's because of Avodah Zara, but it's midrabanan. Then metamatu makala, kishar kol mashkin temeim. And first of all, the sheet is only a revis by mashkin. We're going to learn that today, not a kazayis. And also, mashkin is not an av. Mashkin is a rishri. So there is still a tuma from yain stam, but nothing near as the mamish yain that was poured to Avodah Zara. Halacha 9. Now, guys, what we're going to do now, and this is so important, is we're going to mamash make a recap. We're going beyond Avodah Zarah. We're going to go about the concept of something tamei imparting tuma, the system, how it works, and some amazing exceptions. So let's go. Halacha tes. B'kol advarim shebiyadnu b'tchilas hasefer atkam. Tchilas hasefer, my friends, is referring to Sefer Tahara. Atolamed she'avois hatumais. Some of them are avos min haTorah, and some of them are going to be called avos hatumais, but they're only midrabanan. Just to make that clear. Like we learned in this chapter, everything regarding Avodah Zarah is takan av midrabanan. Halacha yud kol hamistami, something that acquires, that becomes tummy because of an av shel Torah. Generally, the rule will be harehu v'lad tuma shel Torah. The kol hamistami machmas av shel devreim will be hama v'lad shel devreim. Halacha yud alef kol avatuma shem mit tame b'magom ve'eina matama b'maso bein av shel Torah bein av shel devreim. Odom, so let's go. Sheretz is metame b'maga, not b'masa min haTorah. Avodah Zarah easy. Avodah Zarah metame b'maga, not b'masa shel divrayim. The din is that Odom hanigei aboy, that while a person is touching it and taka becoming tummy, at that time the garments that he's wearing or touching do not. And never. And not another man that he's touching, or not another avir klecheres that he has his hand in, even though he's still touching the source of that which is imparting tuma to him. And zicher, right? He is, what is this person? He's a vlad. What's the power of vlad? The vlad on the highest level, which is Rishon, can only impart tuma to Eichlin. And he'll make the Eichlin what? If he's a Rishon, he'll make them a Sheni, because he's a Rishon. And therefore, the Rambam is trying to say, generally a Rishon cannot be Metamam, Adam, and Kalim. The Chiddush here is that even while he's touching the source, he does not import it. But Halacha Yud in contrast, any Avatuma, that has so much power, that not only does it impart Tuma, but through Maga, but also through Masa. Whether it's Avshol Torah or Beishol Divrayim, then we say, Adam Hanigeya Boy. While a person is touching it, while a person is carrying it, guys, don't jump. I know there are exceptions, but that's the approach. That anything that's matama b'mago ubemasa, then when the person is either touching it or carrying it, at that time, that person will channel the tuma, and they will also become a rishon like the person. And similarly, if while the person is touching this source, he's also touching oichlin, they will become a rishon, as long as he's still connected, or in the negative, as long as he did not disconnect himself from his tuma. But pidish minatamav, even by something that's matama b'mago ubemasa, the moment you stop touching it, then you are a rishon. Only if you touch a cholin, and even then you only make them into a sheni. Now hold on, I know that we just learned many exceptions, so the Rambam is going to put together all of the exceptions. It's things that are matama b'mago ubemasa. But while you're touching it, your clothing won't be tummy. While you're touching something, you're wearing clothing, your clothing won't be tummy. Only b'masa, not b'maga. Like an avela, he's going to give. And the other only exception is merkov. Avalan avela merkov was if I'm touching something, not carrying, because by nevela, when I carry an avela, when I carry a merkov of azov, I will be matama my begodim at that time. Torah says Yechabes begodim, but only by masa, not by magom. I become tamei, but and if you touch his food, he only makes them a sheni. But if you're carrying an avela, if you're carrying a merkov, then yes, and if you touch other food items prior to you stopping to carry either the nevela or the merkov, then they are a rishon like you. That's great. Now, halacha yud gimel. Now we're going to have, the Rambam is really going to address a question. Why didn't we mention a third exception? Why is that Rambam only writing the exception of nevela and merkov? Why not mechatos? Let's read the answer. Mechatos, as long as there is enough of the mechatos that you can use it to sprinkle, or you can dip in the azoid without having to smear it in, just with dipping, and you can pick up enough liquid to sprinkle it. Afapi, that they have the mechatos is called an av, and therefore it's like an avail in America. And we learned clearly that if a person is touching mechatos and touching begodim, the begodim do not become tummy. If they carry it not for the need of it, at that time the begodim will become tummy. So that's a third exception. So why didn't the Rambam include it? The Rambam says, I'll tell you why I didn't write it as an exception. Because I'm being practical. When you touch liquid, what are you doing? Are you touching or are you carrying? Technically, whenever you touch liquid, you make all of the liquid move. And we learned that moving something is called carrying something. So really, it's not shayich magov mechatos. Theoretically, magov mechatos, even while you're touching it, would not impart tumah to your begadim. Only by noisei. De facto, when you touch it, you're carrying it. Because great. Another the Rambam is explaining why he didn't mention something else. Also, in other words, even though there are other exceptions, that something is matama both mamaga and b'masa. Still, when you do maga b'shas, you're connected to the tuma. You don't pass it further. Only through masa. The only exceptions is nevela and merkov. Now, if someone touches tzemer nevela, wool of an animal's carcass, so the zav sat on a saddle. And out of the saddlebag, there are little ishtikalach threads. And the truth is that when you touch it, the clothing that you're wearing also become tummy. The tummy begodim mishas magay mishum noisei, but they become tummy only because of noisei. The point is that since it's not shayach only to have maga, it's always maga and masa together. Anything that's very, very light, whenever you touch it, you end up moving it. Moving it is carrying it. So where do you have in reality, technically, either maga or masa to tell you, by maga, it's not matama begodim. By masa, it is matama begodim, nevela and merkov. Halacha yudal. Now, habeleya nivlas oiftoir, what we learned yesterday. So only b'shas bilu yasai. Then not only are you tamei, but matama begodim kamei shabiyarn, and your clothing like you become a rishoy. The im naga ba'oichlin, while the food is in your base habliya, then they also become a rishon l'tuma. But after they swallow it, hareza peirush mimetamav, and then if you have contact with it, okay, you're a rishon, you make it into a sheni. Halacha tezva, hasoyrev paraduma, and uparim usiirim hanisraf, and the nishaleach es hasoyer. Afalpi that the Torah writes in all of these cases that while you are doing it, you and your begadim are tamei, as we learned above in Ochus Paraduma, Perik Vav. Nevertheless, im nogu beichol and afilu b'shas maseyen. By the guy that's soirev, the Paraduma, the guy that's mishaleach, if while he's doing his avodah, which is making his garments tamei, he's touching other foods. Hareihein sheni latuma. That's b'chlal a different rule. In other words, here we're differentiating between that which you are wearing and that which you are touching. Where do we find such a chilik? Only by the soidef paraduma and paramusir anasraf. And the final halacha to zayin, hanegeh ba'ava avos atuma, hamushlach b'teich hamikvah. So let's say, guys, there is a sheretz that's inside the mikvah, an avela sheretz or a mishkav. It's inside the mikvah, right? The guy is also in the mikvah, and you're touching it. We don't say that since the act of contact is while you are under the water, you don't become tamei, you do become tamei. Hareyu tamei. Shenema, achmayin uboy umikva mayim yihator, and the Torah writes in the same pasuk with the Gemen of Lasam Yitma. Now, why does the Torah juxtaposing it? To tell you that even afilu kashem mikva, they are still metam. However, now this statement is said in a narrow area, but this is a much bigger statement than this halach. Let's say, guys, think about it. You're in the mikvah, and there's a dead rodent in there, and you're touching it. Let me just add a detail, Danny. As long as you stop touching it prior to you leaving the mikvah, as long as you stopped having contact while you are fully submerged in the water, which is key. So while you have no contact, you are going out of the mikvah, you're going up from the mikvah. And as we'll see over here, Mikan, we learn, many people erroneously think, what makes a person tar? Going under the water. So I have a thing, I go under the mikvah 9 times. You're wording it wrong, it's a mistake. What makes a person tar is them going out of the mikvah. People dunk many times. It's not dunking, it's to go out many times. Now, 1 second. Going out of the mikvah is only effective if a moment prior to you going out, you were fully submerged. That's like a precondition. What brings tahara? You going up or out of the mikvah. Let me use words al pi Hasidus. There's ratzoi and shuv. Going under the water is ratzoi. Because water is the world of kedusha. I'm a discussion. You're ratz. Coming out is shuv. When are we purified? Who brings us tahara as God? Shuv, not ratzoi. It's a very important halacha this. When you leave the mikvah, now, the point is the word chshiyala. In other words, if the din would be that you have that the under the water would give you tara, that Rambam would have written over here, if you are touching it in the mikvah. If you let go when you're under the water, you're good. It's not about you being under the water, it's about you exiting the water. In other words, if you, even though you're in the mikvah, all of the power of the nevela to impart continues even though you're in the mikvah. While that is in the mikvah, no, it's the zav makes the mishkav tamei in the mikvah. However, mishkav in the mikvah yitar. Should I also like tefillah? I want to add another nuance, Danny. If the going under the water is that which makes you tar, then it would never be tar. Because you have something that's already submerged. The mishkav is submerged. The zav goes in there. The zav sat on it. That means it only became tamei when it was already under the water. Nevertheless, when the zav lets go of it and you take out that merkov, it becomes tar.
So when the source of tumah is in the water, do we then consider that mikvah a tummy mikvah?
No, we don't. You just stay away from that. It's not the tummy the mime. Mime are never tummy. That's right. What is that?
And it's only the tummy if you're touching it.
That's right. You're not.
If it's in a mikvah that has a share.
Sure.
You're good.
I'll tell you more. You can go into the mikvah with another yid that's tummy on the level of an up. Same thing. Someone was tamei mace. 2 yid can go to the mikvah at the same time. That's the minhag Yisrael. We don't have separate hours for men. You go, Megetarai. Huh? The women don't do that. That's for their own modesty. Correct. Now, another din, the person that's touching the mishkav tshuva mikvah, same thing. So, in other words, there's something in the mikvah. That thing is tummy, still under the water. I'm touching that, and at the same time, I'm touching begodim. Because that's a din by mishkav. If you remember, guys, merkov, only merkov, we differentiate between maga and masa. By mishkav and moishav, even when I'm touching it only, and I'm touching at the same time something else or wearing clothing, they also become tummy. It was worth it just for this chapter. Now it's going to be worth it just for the next chapter. Perek Zayin, guys, we are beginning. This is the chapter about Tumas Eichlon Umashkin. And what we're going to learn is something amazing. We're going to learn the unique, there's unique midrabanan b'negei mashkin. And as we'll see, that everything that we learned until now, that Av goes to Rishon, goes to Sheni, midrabanan oy gewalt. As we'll see, mashkin becomes Rishon. Everything that we learned until now was when there's contact, it normally goes down. We also learned that Merkav, Moishav, stays on the same level. Right? The Nida stays on the same level. Mishkav and Moishav. Now we're going to learn Midrabanan that Tumah can go from a lower level to a higher level. If you have Sheni, not always, we'll say we're not, that touches liquids, it's not pshat that normally that liquid will become a shlishi if it's truma. No. Av that touches mashkin becomes a rishon. Rishon that touches mashkin becomes a rishon. Sheni that touches mashkin becomes a rishon. And then we're going to learn that mashkin can be metama kelim midrabanan. Oh my gosh. So you can start out with the sheni, touching liquid. The liquid is going to touch a keli, and the keli is going to become tummy. As we'll see in this chapter, Perek Shishi has 6 halachas, but they're bam halachas. It's a short chapter in quantity, but it's very important to remember. Salachal, Perek Shvi, Perek Shvi. The 7th chapter has 6 halachas. It's clear in the Torah that foods and mashkin could become tamei nistamim. Shenemer, as it says in Parashat Shmini, Mikol ha'oichel asher ye'ochel asher yavi olav mayim. Again, there's a prerequisite that it became muchshard, then yitma. If something later touched it, if something made it tummy. B'chol mashka asher yishasa b'chol kli. The mashkin doesn't need to become muchshard; it's liquid itself. Yitma. So that's clear. Now, let's go to Torah laws. Even though, my friends, oichlin, even chulin, could become tummy on a level of a sheni. But let's say a person is an av, right? And he touches oichlin, becomes a rishon. That oichlin touches other oichlin, even though oichlin can become sheni, not if it's coming from oichel. That's very important. I want you to add something else later. Oichel cannot make mashkin to meim midin Torah. In other words, even though guys oichlin and mashkin could acquire tum on the level of a sheni, even though it's chulin, that is only if it's coming from other than kelim. Midin Torah, oichlin and mashkin that already shine cannot further spread it. Midin Torah. Avo when they say from Gazer oichel atamei b'chwal mat sheim naga b'oichel acher. The oichel was only a rishon and it touched other oichel. Yes, timahu. Now I'm saying with the Rabbanan guys that oichel can become a shenis midoi raisa, but only from Adam and Caleb. Here it's from oichel. And as we mentioned in the intro, timan much more than you think. The ein oichel metame keli shenaga balo oilam, but oichel cannot be metame keli even midevrayam. And now what about mashkin? Who you bet? How we're going to see how much mashkin is metame keli. That it could be metama oichlin, making it into a sheni Danny. Mashkin, as we'll see soon, make it into a rishon, and even kalim oigavalt, kalim shenogam, as we'll see in a moment. So that's step number 1. Halacha number 2. Step number 2. Ein l'chavalatu mashemetami kalim ella mashkin tameim b'ulvat, even with the Rabbanan and tumazu midevrayim. Who sheyia? The Rambam is going to write a couple of statements. And guys, after you read Gimel and the Beis and Halacha Gimel and Halacha Vav, are we going to get the full picture? There are certain statements that Rambam writes later that when you go back, you get tripped up, but we'll do the best we could to help up over here. So first of all, Chavra Nochamal, that Vohu sheyia oisan hamashkin temeya machmas av ma'avas atumas bein shel Torah sheik bein shel Devarim. Let me tell you what I'm excluding, Danny. Just I'll tell you, go the end game. We're going to learn in the next chapter. We're going to begin Tumas Yodayim. Tumas Yodayim, like Stam Yodayim Shniyos, it doesn't begin with an Av. And even though we'll see that if a Sheni touches Mashkin, the Mashkin becomes a Rishon, Midrabanan. When we're going to be learning now that Mashkin, Midrabanan, can be Metama, Oichlin, Mashkin, and even Kalim, all of this is only if you began with an Av. What do I mean? I'm going to say the whole Perek by heart. What do I mean I began with an Av? If I'm an Av and I touch the Skeli is a Rishon Midoi Raisa. Midoi Raisa. Okay? If this Skeli touches Mashkin, Midoi Raisa, the Mashkin is a Sheni. Midrabanan, the Mashkin is a Rishon. Tell you more. I touch a Keli. I'm an Av. If I'm an Av, the Keli becomes a Rishon. The Keli touches Oichlin that was Muchshad. The Oichlin now is Sheni. If that oichlin touches mashkin midrabanan, the mashkin is a rishon. And that mashkin that touches a keli at some times imparts tuma. All of this is only when it began with an av. Not direct. I don't care if it's direct. If it began anywhere from the beginning with an av, lahoitzi, tumas yodayim. Tumas yodayim never begins with an av. This din that your yodayim are shnias has nothing to do with an av. Even though a sheni makes mashkin a rishon, the dinim that this mashkin can bite it and part tuma is only when it begins from an av.
The whole time we're learning the difference between Rabban and the Raisa on the Tumah is about like when you burn the Truma and stuff like that.
Even though there are exceptions, that there are 6 times that by Asfekas you burn the Truma. There are certain Tumah is Chamuris that we learned that even though it's Midrabanan, you burn the Tumah, but those are exceptions, correct. But in Ikar Adin, the difference will be.
You have tons of stuff. It's toilet or whatever.
Very good. Now, why did they make by Oichlin? They made no takana. Oichlin can only be only midrabanan metama Oichlin and mashkin. Oichlin can never be metama keli. Why did they make it a mashkin? Because there's one type of mashkin that's an ab, right? We learned the zera, the roik. Gezerim shumashka azov. Shu'av, and there it's matama kelim within Torah. Sheneman, as it says on Parshas Mitzvah, v'chiyoroik hazov atroid k'moshaviyanu. So since there is one type of liquid that has itself a din of a av,
all liquids.
So all liquids. Now, k'shgozru ala mashkin, sheitamos hakelim gozru, sheyamataben hakelim mitoichan. Now we're going to begin to differentiate where there was contact. Until now, guys, until Perek Shvi, from Hilchos Avos Hatuma, we only learned inside, outside by a klicheres. Now we're going to broaden it. Let's keep on reading. Ketzad. Im naflu la'avid klicheres. Now this is a pshita, right? Nitma kuloi. Now let's go to the din. Mashkin is a rishoin, and therefore the keli becomes a sheni. Now listen to what's happening. The im nagu b'sha'or kelim mitoichan. Forget about klicheres. Also mitame kulam, and they become a sheni. So far, no chiddush. But here's the word. Mashkin tamei. Mashkin that's tameim on the level of Erisha. If it's going to touch not the spittle of a zov, not the zera. We're speaking about mashkin that's tamei as Erisha. If it touches a keli that has a receptacle, here we do not differentiate saya klicheres, which never acquires tuma from the outside. The chiddush here is any other clay shetem, any keli that could become tohred by taking it into the water. Then the din is nitlu achoirav bilvad. Listen, and only the backside, the outer side of the keli is a sheni. V'loy nitma toichay. Now, guys, first of all, Danny, that's only midrabanan. Now, by medvarim amurim, this liner, you're going to read this now. I'm going to people that learn the Rambam properly. You're going to learn halacha vav. You're going to get stuck. If you're not getting stuck, you're not learning it well. So let me word it in a way which will be the answer to the getting stuck. It does not mean truma. I want to say that clear. Danny, if the outside of this keli touch truma, the truma will not become tamei. Clear. The truma means if it's not kodesh, that we separate the inside and the outside. These are the words. Aval, anything that's less than kodesh, we make such a chilik between the inside and the outside. Aval kodesh. But when it comes to kodesh, keli shenitmu achayrav, even though midrabanan nitma kulay v'reikun shein latuma, we are going to come back to this in halacha vav. The key that I want to make out is that Rambam is writing truma because there's different milas, right? You have chulin, you have ma'aser sheni, you have truma, and you have kodesh. He means truma. He means we this difference between the outside and the inside, which means that if mashkin touched a keli from the inside, the keli remains tahor. Is if we're not dealing with kachim. As far as kachim is concerned, I'm sorry, if mashkin touches a keli from the outside, the inside remains tahor. That difference is only to anything that's less than kodesh, and we're going to continue on halacha. Let's keep on going over here. Now, halacha dalet, probably I know we already explained. She'oichlin ein metamen kelim, because oichel even midrabanan could be metame oichel. Mashkin never kelim. However, mashkin metamen, mashkin could. V'lama also b'trumas mashkin heket.
This is the mashkin tradition.
We'll see in a moment. No, even before you get there, Danny. No, it's.
Or we're talking about zav.
We're talking about mashkin. No, we're talking mashkin. That's addition. I want to just add a word. We'll see in a moment that mashkin always is addition. Mashkin will automatically become addition, but he's not getting it. But to begin with, no, it's oichlen and mashkin. That's addition. Midoy raisa cannot be metama oichlen and mashkin. They only made the drabanan on mashkin. Also tumas mashkin ekazeh. Now, why did they make this difference? What we learned at the end of halacha gimel. Shakli shenogo mashkin tameim ba'achoyrav To anything that's less than kodesh, it's b'chlal not tamei. And why? And that's enough. And why did they want us to remember that that's only midrabanan? Danny, what you just mentioned, shalay yisrif or lev truma v'kachim. Shalay yisrif or lev truma v'kachim is even if kachim becomes tamei, and by kachim we did not say outside and inside. That was the end of halacha gimel, right? We said in the end of halacha gimel that if a keli had contact with mashkin from the outside, la kodesh, the inside becomes tamei. I know that. But the fact that for anything not kodesh, we were machalik between inside and outside, that will help us remember that it's only midrabanan. Halacha hey, kvar beyanu shoy cholen ba'mashkin shenogu ba'avam atuma midoy raisa, they become a rishon. That's clear. The chein nago oichol ba'adam, a guy that's tummy, an av. Oy bekele shenitma ba'av. Now, I'm sorry, adam, I take it back. An adam that's a rishon and touches food, midoy raisa, the food becomes a sheni. A keli that became tummy with an av. What is that keli? A rishon. If this keli touches oichlon or mashkin, midoy raisa, they become a sheni. How do you oiso oichol shen latum? Now, if this oichel shenar gavazeh hasheni, what about food that touches a sheni? It's going to be called shlishi latuma. The Rambam is not saying that chulin can become a shlishi, but there's a shaykhs. There's some areas like we'll see. And the imnog shlishi ve'echol devi harei zenikra devi latuma. Amed varam amurim, that we count these numbers. Numbers are necessary only by food, but by mashkin we'll never give a number. We'll call it Vlad. The Rambam words it this way. We'll never give. Why won't we give it a number? Because whether mashkin touched an av, which makes it what? Oidishain midoy raisa, or whether mashkin touched a rishain, which will make it, if that rishain was adam and kalim, that would make it a sheni midoy raisa, or whether mashkin, which is not truma, or not kachim, touches a sheni midoy raisa, it's nothing and nothing, it's tahar midrabanan. No matter what was the source, even a sheni, if it touches mashkin, it becomes a rishain. Goes backwards. It goes backwards. It gets more tummy. So the Rambam, the way the Rambam words it, there's no point in counting rishon, sheni, shlishi, revi, because who cares? In other words, if you have this liquid that touched that liquid, rishon, mashkin, whenever mashkin is tummy, midrabanan, it's a rishon. And you have to remember that. Because now if this mashkin touched the keli, all right, ma'achoyrav, so even though midoy raisa, I know that that oichlen, a rishon cannot be matama adam and kalim. Midoy raisa. That's what we're learning. That mashkin is matama kalim midrabanan.
So the keli is a sheni. If that touches mashkin again, then it's a rishon.
Very good. Otazoi. Ketzar. Here the Rambam is going to give all these examples. Yayin shenaga ba'avatuma. So let's say a person had the merit of doing a burial, mes mitzvah. Or let's forget about a mes mitzvah. You did the mitzvah of halvos hameis. Person halachically got so close they became tummy. Or so the wine is a rishon midoraisa. Or if wine touched rishon. Now, guys, if the rishon is adam and kalim, yayin becomes a sheni midoraisa. Or if the wine touched the sheni, now here midoraisa, it's nothing. Tell you more than that. If the rishon is food, what did we learn today? That midoraisa, food cannot make a sheni, but midrabanan it could. You understand? Or even if the food is a sheni, has a chayin, and the food that's a sheni touched mashkin, the mashkin is not truma. Midrabanan, the mashkin becomes a rishon. And therefore, the im bechein and noge yain ze b'shemen, like liquid to liquid. I think it's a liquid. Wine touched oil. B'shemen b'chala b'dvash, udvash b'mayim, umayim b'yayin. Acher bechein ad lo'olam. Dani kulam rishon latuma. All of these liquids. Ucheilu kol echad mehem nitma ba'af tchila. And now the kulam metamen es hakelim. But hold on. Let's not forget what we learned in Halacha Gimel. The Rambam is going to come back to in a moment, right? Don't forget that. In other words, I'll say better. Even mashkin that's a rishon midoy raisa cannot be metama kalim midoy raisa. Now we're talking not differentiating whether the mashkin is a rishon midoy raisa or whether this mashkin is a rishon midoy rabbanan that came from the sheni. Don't forget that mashkin to be metame kelim, we're going to have to go back to the achoidim and the pnim. We're going to come back to that number. Now, chein and v'chulam matama mesakelim. Chein klisha nitma achoidim b'mashkin. So let's go into this mashkin, Danny. Let's go back to Allah Gimel. So I had this mashkin that touched not the inside of a keli, the outside of a keli. So what did we say? The outside of the keli is tamei. Let's keep on going further. It means we're going the rabbanan on top of the rabbanan on top of the rabbanan. Normally we say don't say double the rabbanans. You say it over here. That's not the way we word it, but it keeps on going. And now the backside of the mashkin touch mashkin acherim acherim tameim. The hairs, even if the mashkin is chulin. You know what those mashkins becomes a rishoy. It becomes a rishoy. And now and making them into a shniyim. That they're metamen oichlan mashkin acherim. Because amazing. Because I don't care how many steps, whenever at some point the touch mashkin, even if it's coming from the lowest level of tumah, it's a tumah that's only in the backside of a keli. Mashkin becomes a rishoy. And right, the Chachamim said, mashkin, that's a rishon, is matama oichlin and mashkin and kalim, the backside of a keli. And by the way, the inside of a keli also. If it goes into the inside, the whole keli becomes tummy. Now the Rambam and Halacha Vav is going to clarify what you'll see. Again, it looks like it's different than in the Halacha Gimel, but it's not. Let's read it. Achoyrei hakli shenitmu b'mashkin, which is what we learned in Halacha Gimel. V'nogu oichlin. Now what did we say, Danny? We said the backside of the keli, the backside is tummy. So let's 1 second. Other food items touched it. Even truma, it's nothing.
It's a shame.
No, but truma can become a shlish. It's a problem. Shakli shenitnu achoyrav bilvad einoi metame eso oichlen elo lekoidish bilvad. Now, 1 second, Danny. For kodesh, what level will that kodesh be? Or shlishi? Which is big. Shlishi means, we're going to learn that later, not only is that puzzle, it's tummy. Because now if this kachim touches another kachim, it can still make it into a revi. Shakli shenitmu achoyrev harezetome kuloi la kodesh k'moshe b'yarnu. So in other words, here it comes out that the achoyre hakeli that becomes tamei only, from mashkin only has the power to pass it on to kachim. Now the question is, didn't the Rambam write that lekachim nitmakuloi? So, like if you're speaking about kachim, nitmakulei. If you're speaking about not kachim, then it should become nothing tamei. So, what's the lachoyra? Okay, we'll leave the question. I'm just saying one thing is that when the Rambam writes in the end of Allah Gimel, that's the point. He doesn't mean, if the truma would have meant that you're making truma tamei, no, you're not making truma tamei. I'll leave the question open. Yagata what's us? This is not on the Yagata. That's a problem. Okay, good. Perek Shmini. Perek Shmini is going to begin with the sugi of Tumas Yodayim. Now, a couple of big rules. Rule number 1 will be that Safek Tumas Yodayim is tar. It's a very important rule. The Perek Shmini will introduce another type of tumah, similar to Tumas Yodayim. And that is that if a person eats tamei foods, if a person drinks tamei dika mashkin, so even though we learned in Perek Zayin that mashkin midrabanan becomes a rishon, and midrabanan mashkin can be metama adam, oichel, mashkin, and kalim. What oichlin and mashkin can never be metama midrabanan through touch is adam. That we're not going to find. We're going to learn in this chapter yodayim, yeah, And that means if I touch something that's only tummy on the level of Arishan, my Yodayim will become tummy. If I eat a certain amount of Oichlin Tameim or Mashkin Tameim, I completely become tummy Midrabanan. We'll see why the Chacham made this. This is the opening shot of these types of tumas. Perek Shmini has 13 halachas, beginning with halacha al. Kol hanegeh b'yadav b'rishon latumam. If you touched rishon, like guys remember, bein shoya oisa rishon adam, even adam can only be matama. Adam that's an av is matama. Adam oichlan mashkin. I got that. And Kalim, Adam and Kalim. But an Adam that's a Rishoin could be Metama Midoy Raisa, Oichlan Mashkin, even Midoy, Oichlan Mashkin, even Chulam becomes a Sheni. An Adam that's a Rishoin cannot be Metame, Adam and Kalim. So here, the new thing, that if you with your hands, Kol Hanegebe Yodav, on anything that's a Rishoin, whether that is a person, whether it's a Kli, whether it's Oichel, whether it's Mashkin, so the now new din that your hands, but only your hands becomes tamei, and only ad hapedek. Big machloikas where ad hapedek means. We're going to accept that the most chamerdik opinion ad hapedek will mean where there's a chibur kafayad and the zroya, right, which is called your wrist. Even though sometimes we can be lenient until in halacha today, like on Yom Kippur, since there's a competing value of washing negel vasid and not washing your hands on Yom Kippur, so we wash less. We touch the adapedic where the knuckles were from the palm to your fingers. Anyways, adapedic means until the wrist, the way we do it today. Now, if the kleicheres became tamid with an av, that means the kleicheres, my friends, is a rishoin, and consistent with the dinei kleicheres. Touch doesn't mean physical touch, but it means entering its airspace. Was you put your hands in the airspace, or I'll tell you better, you put only your hands into Beis Menuga. What did we learn, my friends? Yes, a Bayis Menuga is enough, and everything that's in it becomes tamei in a level of addition. But you know what we learned? You have to enter Rosh Hashanah. And we learned if you're walking backwards, then you have to go fully in. Here, midrabanan, if you only stick your hands in, it's the concept that we separate the hand from the rest of the body. Only your hands become tamei. And as we'll learn in a moment, a big chiddush that other than for kachim, tumas yodayim is resolved. You don't need mikvah, maspik netilas yodayim, as we'll see soon. Just under the words netila, the Alter Rebbe writes, there's different opinions why we call it netilas yodayim. The basic reason is that Natala was a classic name of a size keli in the times of Chazal, which had the amount of a revius or more. So to remember that you have to begin with a keli that has a revius, they call it natla. To use a natla, also the whole concept that it has to come from a keli, b'koyach adam, all of that is included in the word netilas yadayim. Now, halacha base, hayadayim shniyos v'divrei seifrim lo'olam. Another din was if I know that I touched the rishain, my hands become tummy. Let's go more than that. I don't know if I touched anything. Elama, let's use the words. I had hesach hadas. Not that I know that I touched. I was not mindful to keep my hands away from touching tumas rishain, which is so prevalent. So stam yodayim ishniyos. She'en tumas alon ledevrayim. She'goz tumalayim goz rushiyah kshein letuma. But you're never going to find. I'm sorry. This is not stam yodayim. There's no such a thing as your dying being rishon. There's not shayach that. No, it's if an af touches me on the tip of my finger, I become a rishon. Me, your dying. Whenever there's too much yodayim, it only means a sheni. No, it's I had contact with an av. No, if I would have entered the Rosh Hashanah, I would have become a rishon. Oy shenaga biyadav ba'adam shemetame bigodim actually perish mi metamav. Interesting. So this adam is a rishain, very strong rishain. What's that very strong? That when he's carrying the nevela, at that time his garments become tummy. That means there are times that he channels the source. I touched him. That's why we kept on learning that even when someone is being Matama Begadim, we always learn, not Adam, not Kleicheres. By Adam, so he cannot be Matama Adam. For the Adam, he's considered the Rishon. Now the Rabbanon, if I touch the Rishon, my hands become a Sheni. Hariyad of Sheni Yois, Halacha Gimel, Hapigol Bahanoisa. And also the Tzarid Shalmanach is the remnants of flour, which all of these things, once they are become sanctified because they were in a clay shadis, there's a concept of lina. And afterwards, they become invalid. They are Kerishain Latuma. Umaynin Bahem, therefore Rishain Visheni, because they are a Rishain. And therefore, if someone touches Pigol or Noiser or the Tzarid Shalmanachais, their hands become Tamei. However, when I touch an Adam, that's a Rishain, then even if I just touched your tip of your finger to the tip of my finger, my Yadayim become a Sheni. The moment the Tumah is being passed from Oichlin, we're going to learn details that Oichlin can only impart Tumah. Even though the Oichlin is Tamei, if it has the amount of a Beitzah, Nevela is different. Nevela is a Tumah Chamura. But whenever Oichlin acquire Tumah from another place, it can only impart it, and according to some Rishonim, it can only acquire it with the size of a Kebetza. Here also. But if you have a Kebetza amount of the Pigol Noisev, Tzara Chalmanachais, then your Dayim become a Shneas. Ein a Pigol Noisev Mitztarfin, Alpha Pisha Shirum Shavak Kebetz. And why are we not Mitztarf? Because we have this, it helps us remember Tumas Yadayim Edevreim. Avol Sha'ar Oicholin, we're speaking about foods that are Tomei Middo Oiraisa. If different foods that are Rishoin Mitztarfin, She'ein Oichel Tameim Betaman Asayadayim Ad Sheyu Kabetza, and therefore we do follow, if the source is Tamei Minat Torah, the rule that if two things shear, they have the same shiur, they're Mitztaref. Halacha Dal. Kulis apigol, the thigh bone of pigol layanoisad, afapishi sasuma. And therefore, as we learned in the previous halachas, since you can't touch the basar, if it's not nukuba, it doesn't impart that level of tuma. Yes, nitmu yadav. Because shoha'atzom, now we're not speaking this about an avela, we're speaking this only by kachim. Shoha'atzom, I shall kachim, shashimshu, noisa, they pigol, matamasayadayim, because they are considered a basis, ladavar ha'asad, and they could impart this tuma of tumas yadayim. Halachei, Sar Kodesh, Shiyatza Chutzal Michitzasa. Here, there's already a suffix, Im Metamis Yadayim Eloi. Now, the Rambam is going to introduce, that's a Boidaloi Yifshata, the klal, that since, it's all based on the logic, that since Tumas Yadayim is only Midrabanan, we're lenient. Lefikach Eina Metame, because a suffix, Tumas Yadayim Todd, as we will learn, and we'll have the whole Perek Yudalid that will develop this rule. You have to eat it in one house, if you remember. Why? Because since B'nai Chabura Zidis and Hain, they're gonna normally prevent people from taking the meat out of that sitting, out of this pious, as we learned a little bit together. So since it's something that's very rare, for sure there is no tumah over here. Halachavot. Ein tumas yadayim b'mikdash. A big cloud. You would argue, you're kidding. Where do we find only washing your hands and your feet? In the Beis HaMikdash. No, that's a whole different type of washing. That's a hachana to Avodas Hashem. And there's no tumas yadayim b'mikdash. Shebeshah shegozru tuma al yadayim, they lechatchila never decreed it as far as temple is concerned. Ella hanegeh ba'oichlin tameim v'chayoytze b'hem. In other words, bein shenaga b'mikdash, bein shenaga b'mikdash. And now v'naga b'kotchim b'mikdash loy timon. Now, then I want to say something. The fact that the Rambam speaks about Hanegeh Ba'icholin Tamei, many are medayik, that mashma from the Rambam, that if I touched mashkin Tameim, then maybe I do impart Tumah. But by Eichlin, I don't do that. And why might that be a difference? As we learned in Perek Zayin, this tremendous chumrah by mashkin, that since there is one type of mashkin that it in itself is an av, they made all mashkins into a risha and v'chol. Now, no, you had kachim that were taken outside. As we will learn. Let's go back to the normal yodayim. I touched the rishoy. Big chiddush, my hand becomes tummy. So the din is that one hand becomes tummy, and if my one hand that's a sheni touches my other hand, the other hand is completely taught. Or let me word it differently. How do I remove tumas yodayim if I only have tuma on one hand? The noitel as hatameo, and noitel, like we said, natla. Noitel means washing it b'koyach adam through a keli, not a tvila, and that's enough. La truma, avala kodesh. It doesn't work that way. The moment even only one hand becomes tamei. So now what do we say? V'noga bashniya tima. And another din, how do you remove tumas yadayim la kodesh? Ushteyem tzrichos tefila la kodesh. Guys, we're not talking about bamigdash, like goes through bamigdash, but outside the migdash, my hand becomes tamei as a sheni, and the only way I get rid of it is by do tfilas yadayim. And also, if one hand touches the other, they both are tamei on the level of a sheni, and they both need tfilas yadayim. Oh yeah, and even by the way, even nowadays when you're traveling, you don't have a keli. I'm a chayef. You're going hiking and you have a stream of water. Be toivel your yadayim, and that's really the bracha is al tfilas yadayim. And also, like we said, one hand cannot be tam of the other. Now let's go weiter. Now we're going to buy a srishoy. Goes from the beginning. Goes through al kol hayodayim shiyoshniyos. Stam yodayim ashniyos. Why? Because of this rule that your daim are askaniyos. And now that we have this cloud, that even a rishoin imparts tumah to yodayim. Guys, there's so many rishons everywhere. I get it. Av is also now everywhere, but Av is less. So therefore, we presume that you became that your yadayim are shenis. Now, that's how it began. Stam yadayim, other than for kodesh, b'chlal will not even be matama truma. But later, but they didn't. They came after Shlomo Melech. V'achar kach, gadol ha'acharav, even letruma, stam yadayim are shniyos. And therefore, any time you go eat truma, you have to do netilas yadayim. And ve'im naga b'truma kodesh yala psula. Now, Danny, unlike other derabbanans, that's an example where we say for truma derabbanan, you're not soitiv here. V'nisrefes al tumazu. Wow. In other words, the chumrah of this takana that's tam yadayim shniyas to the point that you burn truma. Halacha 9. Lot adam yadav up. You are allowed to wrap your hands in a napkin, put it in a glove today, and you can eat truma b'leinatilas yadayim. Ve'ein chosheshim shema yiga. People jump. Can I do that when I travel, when I eat a sandwich? Now you're going to see even l'shitas Rambam that we're more lenient for truma than we are for anything else. And he gives a gavaldic logic. Aval lo yasekein b'chulin. Now, go on, hold on. Does chulin have to remain tahar? No, it doesn't. But for the people that said that I want to upgrade my tahara, and I'm a person that only eats my chulin al taras hakodesh, or even if I'm not al taras hakodesh, only al taras truma, there you cannot wrap your hand. Why? And what about truma? No, guys, I know that truma may not become tamei midoraisa, even though my yardayim are shniyas only midrabanan. But for something that may not become tamei midoraisa, you'll be more careful. So when you wrap your hand in a napkin, how many people over here, when they taka, had no water, mamish, no water, and you have to eat, so you didn't touch the bread, you ate it through the whatever, you never touched the bread, it happens. By truma, we're less concerned, so we can be more lenient. Now let's go back to halacha zayin. What did we say? That even if a sheni touches mashkin, it goes back. However, Danny, now we understand, like we spoke it up when we learned Perek Zayin. In a case where mashkin becomes a tchila, only because it began with a derabanan, if it didn't begin at some point all the way back with an av, then it will never be matama kelim. The im nagu mashkin elu bay chalin, yes, we'll make it into a sheni. And if it touches mashkin machedim, like we learned, we don't even count by mashkin. We learned to say Perek Zayin, oisen tchila. Shamashkin tchila loyel k'meshu b'yarnu aval ein mashkin elu shenitmu only because of machmas hayadayim will never be matamin kelim because sheikar tumas hayadayim is midivreim. That's the Rambam clarifying when he said in Perek Zayin that this halacha, that mashkin can only be matama kelim if it began with an av, as we made it clear in Perek Zayin. It doesn't mean direct. it can be 100 steps away from the Av. 100, it can be 1,000 steps away from the Av. By the Av, Rishon, Sheni, Mashkin. Then the Mashkin, but it began with an Av. If it never began with an Av, then even though Midoi Raisa Mashkin cannot be Metama Oichlon or Mashkin, it will be Metama Oichlon or Mashkin Midrabanan, but not Kalim. B'chein Gozru Chacham Al Kol Adam. Sheyoichal Lechalon Tomedim. This is the second takon of this Pedek. We spoke this out on the intro. No, it's when you eat Oichlon Tomeim, and you know something, Danny? Even in the Oichlon is not, you see, if the Oichlon is a Rishon, then my hands became tummy. What happens if my hands touch a sheni? If my hands touch a sheni, my hands do not become tummy. But if I eat something that's tummy, with a certain shir midrabanan, I'll become tummy. Guys, we learned this together in the Gemara. What were we? We were afraid that someone who's eating truma, you're going to have food that's a sheni in your mouth, chulin, and then you might drink mashkin to wash it down, or you might be eating a food of truma and you're going to drink down mashkin. You understand? So they said eating and drinking mashkin makes you tummy.
Does that mean something you have to
Midrabanan. Yes. Midrabanan.
That's a shady.
You become the Tumas Gavia. Yeah. But a certain amount. And there's certain exceptions. Doesn't matter on what level, whether you're eating oichel rishon or oichel sheni, you know, it's about chulin. Now, mashkin tameim, we already learned. There's no such a thing as a mashka that's a sheni, because once it's tamei, it becomes a rishon, becomes a tchila, that the person becomes a sheni. What does he need to do? So therefore, hold on. Now, what level of tumah does this person have before tefillah? This guy's a sheni. The guy that ate the cholim tameim. And now, therefore, he made it into a shlishi. And that's only relevant either by truma or by kachin. Let's go weiter. So what's the name by mashkin? You ate a sheni. You become a tomei and a sheni. Say we learned in the previous chapter, you're going to touch mashkin, the mashkin will become a rishon. If a mashkin, I feel a mashkin chulin, it becomes a tchila. But that is only l'tami oicholin and mashkin acherim. But such a tchila will never be metama kalim. Hoil ve'ikar tumas adam zeh midivrei, and we already learned. So it has to begin with an out. Why did that come about? Shema yochel oichel rishon, or even oichel sheni, and you might at the same time while it's in your mouth, you might drink mashke truma, and then the nimsa hamashke truma became tamei to the food that's in your mouth. Or if you're drinking mashkin tameim, you might eat with it oichel truma, and the nimsa tamei b'mashkin shebepiv. No, I'm going to be eating it. Why will the guy be eating it? Because even though your dayim becomes tummy as a sheni, but the Rambam made it clear. Your dayim becomes sheni if you touched a rishon. If my hands touched the sheni, there isn't my yodayim became tummy. So that's why this guy will think, I did not become tummy. The food is already in my mouth. Let me drink it down with wine of truma. He won't chap that when the food is still in your mouth, it still has truma. Enough to be matama truma. The kfar be'ana b'truma is sha'asur lechol truma tameim. Okay, halach yudal. So therefore the truma is tired, and since all the truma that you're eating is tired, if you're going to have any truma in your mouth, you're going to make truma tahira into tamei. You're violating the guarding of the truma. Halach yudalev einoi mistame. Hold on, this truma midrabanan. Atkan we learned the shiur of a kazayis. Now we're going to go a whole different shiur. You become tamei tachirik. At sheyochel machorim tameim kachatzi pras. Guys, pras means half. A half a pras means a half of a half. The Rambam paskins that a full loaf. The Rambam doesn't say a full loaf is 8 eggs. The volume is only of 6 eggs. Remember that. That means a pras is the volume of 3 eggs. A half a pras is the volume of an egg and a half. When you judge it generously, whenever you judge something generously, you're being makel. That means if you had a bay or mechza mitzumtzum, you won't become tummy. When you drink liquids that are tamei, here we do keep the standard of revis. Now, it's called tumas gevia. It's start from the revis. However, now another rule, guys. Remember the whole din of achilas pras? We will now bring here the achilas pras. The achilas pras for the chatzi pras. You ended up eating the beitza mechza, but it was over the period of time that normally a person will eat achilas pras. Im yesh mitchila v'atzweif kedei achilas pras, and mitztarfa, like we always have. The im lav im mitztarfen. Similarly, v'chein im shasa ma'at v'shasa v'shah v'shasa ma'at, etc. You ended up drinking a sum total of reviyas. You're sipping coffee. Let's say the coffee is tamei. Im yesh mitchila v'atzweif kedei achilas pras mitztarfen. Im lav im mitztarfen. Now, ochal pachis mikashir. That means you ate less than an egg and a half, and you went to the mikvah, and you went up. See the ma'ala, and you ate the other. Now you ate the chatzi pras, and you know what, Danny? You ate the chatzi pras. Let's say, guys, let's say the achilas pras is, let's say, 6 minutes. That's easy for me, right? You can eat half of the shear. Let's say the mikvah takes you 3 minutes. You know, you get undressed, go there, you got out of the mikvah, and you were mashlim the shear within achilas pras. Yeah. Elama, did the mikvah remove the first half of the shear? No, it did not. You know why it didn't? Because how can it remove something that's not a thing? Before you ate the amount of chatzi pras, Danny, you're not half tummy. You're not tummy. Yes, it's mitzvah. It makes so much sense. Because how can the mikvah be mevatel, a non-thing? You're b'chlal not tummy. So it doesn't matter that you went to the mikvah. Halacha yud beis, isha, that's a isha latuma. Umenikas b'na. Think about that. So what would you say? You would say, that's the din. You're eating mashkin tameim. You know what the rule is when it comes to nursing? Hariya ben tohar. But it goes through all of Tumah. You know why? For a technical reason. Because even if the child ended up consuming a revius or more, efshen, since the act of nursing is eating very little at a time, the Rambam is not saying that you can't have an infant that's an eater, a drinker. Since it's not a given, they never made a takana.
But 1 second, if I was eating whatever food, that's tummy. But eating slowly. It's taking longer than the time.
If the chatzi pras takes more than achilas pras, you'll never become tummy.
It's not considered one continuous.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And again, but now hold on, guys. If I'm eating food that's tummy in the level of a rishon, that's something else. My hands will become a sheni. But for that, all I need to do is natilas yadayim. If I'm eating food that's a sheni, I don't even have to do natilas yadayim as long as it wasn't hesach hadas. Putting everything together. Let's read the final halacha. Halacha yud gimel. Hameh uberes. B'chlal hameh uberes is someone, right, that if she has cravings and she doesn't give in to her cravings, there were certain leniencies we made for them. We definitely don't want for a woman that's pregnant to feel restrictions that are not necessary while she's pregnant. So here there's one leniency. Now guys, let me use the words of portions, Danny. If there is one portion, there's one shtickle food that has the amount of a kabetzo mechze, shoichekes, they did not allow her to eat it. Here we're speaking about a meoberes that there are many portions in front of her. Not a single portion has that shear. But she's going to be eating it up. She won't become tummy. Danny, we cannot be speaking about a person that's not eating the chatzi pras because then that's not a heter from meoberes. Everyone is that way. We're speaking about a meoberes that during let's say achilas pras is 4 minutes, whatever we mentioned, for 6 minutes. She's going to be eating the shear within that time. But the portions in front of her are small. We're going to be mater. Sakana means that the moment a woman is going to hesitate, I could eat, but it's tummy, I don't want to eat, I don't want to become tummy. If she wants and she doesn't, sometimes there's a danger for the child. And at the end of the day, she knows I ate the beitza umechza sheichekes within achilas pras. But all of the shtiklach food that I ate, like she had a cup. There was no revius. She had little shot cups. She drank a little bit here, then she drank another. The food together was never in that shear. Then Ella, she remained.